Baku, a breath to spark the human heart. Hello there, family and friends, and welcome to episode 5 of the Baku podcast. I'm Mark Philpott. Thank you for taking a few minutes to join me today, as again, I'm talking about the topic of mud. In the last episode of the Baku podcast, we discussed the wisdom of mudbirds, how effortlessly they live true to their essence, behaving in ways that reflect their most authentic selves and trusting in nature to provide for their every need. With the help of our feathered friends, we explored 2 ingredients essential to cultivating a life that resonates with our unique human spirit: the ingredients of aptitude and love. We explored how developing an awareness of our innate talents and love for activities holds the key to shaping lives that are overflowing with joy, energy, and purpose. When we click with the activities that spark our hearts into action, inspire creativity, and enhance our depth of engagement we experience with ourselves, with the people around us, and with the world, we reach that transcendent state that's commonly referred to as flow. Over the next few weeks, I'd like to delve a little deeper into this same theme, which has at its heart 2 very simple questions. Who am I? And what am I doing here? Really simple questions that humanity has grappled with for thousands of years. You see, because humans, unlike the mudbirds, are often sport for choice. Our modern world offers us a plethora of activities that we could pursue, either professionally or recreationally, or both. Social media constantly bombards us with fleeting images of all the glamorous options that could enrich our lives. So what's the first step? How do we start cutting through the chaos to discover where our spirit truly feels settled and at home? How do we gain insights into where our aptitude truly lies? Or what pursuits we really love engaging with? And I believe this journey of discovery to develop a deeper understanding of who we are and what we are here for begins with clarity. So to help us navigate this path to clarity, this week I've done a little digging and I've turned up this story from local folklore. It's a story steeped in ancient wisdom and divine revelations. I've had to employ my investigative journalist wannabe skills to dig through the archives of the local Addy, as well as YouTube archives of forgotten footage long buried by the algorithms due to political and religiously motivated groups. So after doing this digging, I've collated what I've found and I've pieced together a story of quite a remarkable event that took place in Geelong a couple of years ago. G-Town, or Geelong as it's more broadly known to those residing outside of the region, is the 2nd largest city in Victoria. The region is home to over 250,000 residents, making it the 12th largest city in all of Australia. G-Town was put on the map in the early 1840s and established itself as the main port for the wool industry in the Western District. With G-Town's heritage as a city founded on the woolly backs of thousands of bleeding sheep, it's little surprise that G-Town has become the preferred stomping ground of many New Zealand migrants. One of the most notable among this group is the main man in our story today, the modern-day Australian hero, Jezza of G-Town, or as he's better known to his mates, Jezza G, or to his closer mates still, Jezza, or even closer mates, JG. If you haven't noticed him about town recently, that's because he's resigned to hanging out down in Aireys Inlet. He keeps to himself most of the time, surfing, fishing, mainly just avoiding the crowds. If you're lucky, you might catch him in the early afternoon, staring out to sea from the beer garden of the Aireys pub, sipping on a pint of his favourite local pale ale, just reminiscing about the good old days. You see, Jezza G's found a few developments of the modern era pretty tough. There have been a lot of changes that have really shaken his sense of identity and purpose. 2 changes Jezza has found particularly hard to accept are number 1, the rise of boutique wineries, and number 2, the advent of the stand-up paddleboard. Jezza thought that turning water into wine and walking on water were pretty unique talents. talents that contributed significantly to his rise in popularity all those thousands of years ago. But in recent decades, it seems to Jezza like every second Matthew, Mark and Luke seems to be producing their own small batch of vino to cater for the weddings hosted on the prestigious Surf Coast winery estates. Jezza, once an in-demand guest at all the local weddings, a really handy guy to have around in case the booze ran dry, has found himself cast out to the fringes of the local wedding scene. And don't get him started on stand-up paddleboards. Walking on water used to be an art, a deeply spiritual pursuit mastered through years of dedicated practice. Now it seems like every other Paul, Saul and Peter seems to be getting out in the ever-crowded Surf Coast lineups, using the advantage of the stand-up paddleboard to ride waves well beyond their ability. Old Jezza of G-Town has really started to wonder where he fits in, if he still has any relevance left at all. Is he still the light of the world? But in mid-February of 2009, during a typical Victorian summer heatwave, Jezza found his opportunity to shine again. A report in the Geelong Addy tells us a group of 13 men and one known local prostitute, Mary, was seen roaming about in Johnston Park early one Sunday morning, when a very strange series of events unfolded. Judging by the odd composition and general effect of the group, it's presumed they'd been engaged in a fairly rowdy Bucks night celebration the evening before. The Bucks party had commenced celebrations with a hearty meal and a variety of tasting paddles at Little Creatures Brewery before moving on to the Beeves Bar to listen to some local talent on the open mic. While at the Beeves Bar, it said Jezza commandeered the microphone from a bewildered performer and regaled the whole bar with a few furfies. After sipping on a few more furfies and feeling inspired by the local talent, the group moved onto the piano bar to do some singing of their own and a couple of tequila shots. It's believed the group then split in two, with half heading to Home House and the other half onto Lambie's for a good old-fashioned dance. Once Lambie's closed its doors, it's believed the party regrouped for kebabs at the kebab spot before finally finding themselves emerging into the early dawn amidst the disorderly and dishevelled loveless punters evicted at closing time from one of G-Town's finest establishments. You guessed it, Alley Cats. It's reported the group led by Jezza of G-Town were gathering their heads and catching a few moments shut-eye on the green grassy hill of Johnston's Park beneath the shadow of the Geelong Regional Library when they were roused by a group of Christian churchgoers at around 8:30am. The Christians attempted to goad the group into some religious banter. While a few choice words were exchanged, particularly directed at Mary the prostitute, no stones were thrown as the Christians soon realised they were no match for Jezza's quick wit. Or perhaps it was the couple of local police officers driving slowly by that was enough to diffuse the situation. As Jezza and his mates reclined on the grassy knoll, the Christians moved quickly on to make sure they would still score a prime pew at the 9am service of nearby St George's Presbyterian Church. Local police, who briefly spoke to the group, told the press Jezza and his mates, while visibly agitated, didn't appear to be looking for any trouble, but rather seemed to be keenly waiting for the local cafes to open so they could sit down to a nice big brekkie and a strong cup of coffee. Nothing really seemed too unusual. Later, at around 9am, as the group ambled through Moorabool Street, a couple of teens captured video footage on their iPhones as this scene unfolded before them. A blind bloke, known to the locals as Blind Bob, approached Jezza on the street, asking him for a couple of dollars to buy a bus ticket. Jezza, who was clean out of cash from the night before, apologises to Bob. But as Blind Bob starts walking away down the street, Jezza, who now seems visibly upset that he can't buy his brother a bus ticket, calls out for Bob to stop. Jezza then runs down the street, and before anybody knows what's happening, he spits into the dirt of a nearby planter box, scoops up the mud and plasters it in Blind Bob's eyes. Disgusting. Blind Bob, who's known for getting pretty fiery, starts going off at him. "What the bloody hell are you doing? Messing with the blind fella, you bloody dog?" Few of the locals hanging out at the station notice the commotion and, lacking any excitement in their own lives, rush over towards the scene, hurriedly whipping out their phones in the hope of recording a fight. But instead of a fight, here's what we see in the footage as it was later uploaded to YouTube. With 4K clarity, we can see Jezza nimbly sidestepping Blind Bob's wildly swinging cane as he continues to shout insults, bewildered by the muddy spit in his eyes. Then Jezza can be heard quickly calming Bob down by offering to call an Uber. Jezza says he'll shout him a ride wherever he wants to go, but on one condition. He needs to get down to the pool at Eastern Beach to wash the mud out of his eyes first. Blind Bob, placated by Jezza's kind offer, lowers his cane and accepts the ride. Soon, Bob's sitting in the back of a Toyota Prius with Marty the Uber driver behind the wheel. Bob's still a little perplexed by the whole situation, but figures he needs to wash the mud out of his eyes, and while he could just use the free bottle of water Marty's offering him, it'd make a mess in the back of the Prius. So instead, he directs Marty down to Eastern Beach for a brief stop at the kiddie paddle pool. Marty walks Blind Bob down to the pool, where he helps him to wash the mud out of his eyes. And to both of their amazement, his eyes are opened, and for the first time in his life, he can see. He has clarity like never before. So what do we take away from this story? To begin with, the process of discerning what truly resonates with us on a deep spiritual level begins with the mud that has clouded our vision being washed away. The mud could be seen to represent the layers of influence and personal experience that we all accumulate along the muddy road of life's journey. Well-intentioned voices that tell us how we should live, what we should do to protect ourselves. We learn how to make ourselves a small target in a big world so that we can stay safe. Over time, through repetition, these voices and experiences gradually reinforce our limiting beliefs about relationships, money, our sense of agency in our own lives, and our capacity to experience joy, success, and love. Washing away the mud starts by noticing what the mud is. And this can be broken into two parts. The first part is the dirt. The dirt represents the destructive patterns of behaviour that have become embedded in our lives. To seek clarity, we first need to develop an awareness of the dirt, clearly identifying the behaviours that are holding us back from growing and living with greater authenticity, love, and purpose. The second part is the spit, because it's the spit that makes the dirt stick. And the spit can be thought of as the underlying beliefs that motivate, that provide the drive for our dirty behaviours. When we identify the spit, we identify what we have accepted as truth about our health, relationships, wealth, our personal talents, and our ability to succeed in life. Identifying the dirt and the spit, the two elements that make up the mud that clouds our judgment, is a simple and regular process of reflection. There are many different ways to undertake reflective practice. It can take place either individually or with the support of a friend or a professional. But any effective reflective practice have at least 4 essential components. Number 1 is find a quiet space, free of competing distractions so that you can devote your attention to the task of reflection. Number 2 is ask good questions and seek honest answers. The old 5 W's plus an H are a good starting place. What's happening? Who's involved? When does it happen? Where does it happen? Where did this behaviour come from? How do you feel about it now? What would it be like if this behaviour changed? Number 3, give it time. When your mind knows that you're sticking with the process for a designated time each day for a number of weeks or months, you may be surprised by what comes to light. And number 4, write it down. Ever had a good idea only to forget it in a couple of hours? Writing ideas down releases our brain to move forward to the next task or idea. This practice alone is actually enough to create some really significant changes. The beauty of identifying our limiting beliefs, the spit, is that they're actually quite simple to change. Once we understand what they are, and we've decided that there's more to gain from letting go than there is to be gained by holding on, the change becomes quite easy. But it's probably a topic that's best left explored in next week's podcast episode. Thank you for joining me today. If any of these ideas from today's story have sparked some thoughts for you, I really encourage you to talk with your friends and family, dig a little deeper, and help each other seek some clarity and purpose. I wish you all the best this week, and until we meet again, Baku.